to the later time. We're expecting over 50 people. So we got to all say, got it. Got it. So we have about 50 people, but you know how crazy this time of year is. And so we know that some people will be watching the recording or will be joining us as time kind of goes on. But I'm Bev Schumacher. I'm up here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it still feels a lot like winter. The session we're doing today is called Building a Literacy Foundation for Early Learning. And I also added to that school plus home equals learning. It's a phrase I've used over and over again and will continue to use, because whatever we do when it comes to early learning, it's not just about what we do in our programs. It's about what also happens at home, and that's where the total impact of learning results. Okay, wants to go ahead. There we go. So as I said, I'm Bev Schumacher. My credentials are stated there in print, but let me talk about the examples around the outside. The first thing in the upper right-hand corner is actually a game. That was step number 2. Step number 1 was we were working with a high-risk population, and our literacy levels, our vocabulary foundation was very weak, and we began a program of sending books home. And it took us but a very short time to say, well, duh, we're sending books home, but why are we sending something that goes along with the books to cause more conversation and action with the families to build upon those school readiness skills? So we began to share not only books, but activities that would go home with the children. They were very popular as a set. The books were read, the activities were done, we had great feedback. They returned to us in a circulating system, much like a library does. And as a result, we soon began to see that file folders of the materials that we were sharing needed a higher level of durability. And so what resulted was below that, it was fabric game bags that actually looked like tote bags. So when we sent them home, they were washable and they were durable so that they would be sustainable. And as we began to do that and my materials began to be used by other programs, I had people say, but we need other languages. So we began to do things in Arabic, we began to do things in Chinese and also Spanish. Always as a dual language book, but we began to make books available for families in those diverse languages. And then I worked as a volunteer with a group that was promoting literacy in our community and trying to assure school readiness. And I had school principals saying, you need to make flashcards so we can send them home for our children to practice over the summer. And with my background, I went, no, we don't do flashcards. We play, but we don't do flashcards. And as a result, a game evolved. It's called On My Way to Kindergarten. I've also am the author of a book for working with families. And during COVID in 2020, I had the chance to rewrite that, and it's called The Menu for Building Family Partnerships. So that's maybe a better explanation about my credentials. I'm sharing this session today with the wonderful leadership of Vicki Robinson. Vicki is in Texas. Vicki is the one who has coordinated this webinar today. She is the one that is taking over Learning Props as I move towards retirement and is going to be doing the manufacturing and order fulfillment. Still working with her to do product development, so I'm still going to be around a little bit, but the contact information there is for Vicki. And on the handout that I provided, the one-page handout, both of our contact information is there. Don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions that you have. We also have done other free webinars. This is actually the 9th presentation we are giving. These have all been recorded. If you would like to use any of these recordings for your training, for your growth in the topic of early learning and working with families, reach out to Vicki and she can help you get connected with the addresses to look at any of these recorded productions. My challenge for you in the session today is that you will walk away with 3 ideas that will help you to implement stronger literacy, or thoughts that maybe you want to share with someone else who is working with you in partnership. If you get more than that ideas, it's great. But that is what my ultimate goal is to begin with having that number. And I have the word intentional and purposeful there shared. The reason I share that information is because no matter what we do, when we want to introduce something or grow in a certain area, we have to be intentional and purposeful in making sure that we follow through in our intentions. So here's a place for you to record some of those ideas for you to take steps forward. What is literacy? It's an ability to read and write. It really is a foundation for understanding the world and for learning, but it also includes things like comprehension, language, speaking, listening, managing information, and so much more. Building a literacy foundation begins with a firm foundation. It's a very complex topic. It's a skill that evolves and builds over time and continues to grow even into our adulthood as we continue to learn new ideas and share information in different ways. There is no magic solution. This is varied by individual learner. It's varied by the needs of the learner as well as the person who is teaching. It's kind of like our political status these days, a debated topic. Not everybody agrees in how literacy should be learned or taught or should be introduced in programs. I don't claim to have all the answers, but what I would like to do is to encourage both educators and families to be in agreement that we all need to give our attention to this process. I had a person say to me at a conference recently, a parent who said, I just want to know if I'm doing this right. The affirmation that we can give families is very important. Buildings usually begin with a firm foundation. That being said, sometimes it doesn't work that way. I spent 15 years restoring a historic house that was moved from its original foundation to about a mile away, and a new foundation was built under it. School plus home equals learning. My learning about literacy kind of began many years ago when my youngest was a youngster. And he came downstairs one day and he says, Mommy, I need to make you a sign. It needs to say wet paint. I was in the process of refinishing something and he was watching Sesame Street and he said, Mommy, you need to put a sign on it so everybody knows it's a wet paint and they shouldn't sit there. So families are crucial in what we do with the literacy process. We cannot raise children ourselves to have these skills without a collaboration between both your program and the family network. If a family has a diverse language, do everything you can to encourage them to raise their children to have multilingual abilities. Providing a language and rich environment lays a solid foundation for children to learn. When does this begin? It begins prenatal, infancy, toddlers, preschool, kindergarten, school years. What do you think? I hope you realize it's all of the above. It happens throughout. Play is the way I believe that learning takes place, and that idea is promoted by NAEYC, the National Association of the Education of Young Children. In their position statement about developmentally appropriate practice, they define learning as play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning. There's a picture on your screen there. I'm in a community where we have a very low achievement level, especially our African-American young boys in school are doing very, very poorly. They are ranking at the bottom of the nation in terms of achievement, if not a step above, but very, very low. So what do you see in this picture that was in my paper recently? I saw Chicka Chicka Boom being one of the books that's being shared in this classroom, and I went, yay. And I saw a few other things, but then I also saw that there were tables and computers and children just sitting. And I began to go, oh no, that's not what I want to see. I truly believe in the play-based approach by children learning. I like what the American Library Association with the public library branches has defined as early learning. So simple, 4 four-letter words: talk, read, sing, and play. How easy to sell to families because we're asking them to do things they can do every day in their own homes. Talk, read, sing, and play. One of the things that has come out of research and conversations in terms of early learning is conversation turns. If you've been around for a while, like I have been, you maybe have heard about Hart and Risley's research that produced something called the 30 million word gap. The difference in words between a low-income family and an affluent family. 30 million words by the time a child enters school. They called it serve and return at the time. The idea is the same, that I speak, the child speaks. I speak, the child speaks. And we don't have to just speak in words. For very young children, that would be goos, and it would be eye contact, and it would be giggles. It's just an interaction back and forth between the two. So in these conversation turns, at 6 months of age, it predicts what the brain looks like at age 2. So here we're talking about infancy. That's as early as this literacy foundation is starting to be built. The number of toddler to adult turns interactions predicted the IQ and language skills 10 years later, or when the students were in middle school. Encourage staff and families to count the number of times a conversation bounces back and forth. There's a new group doing research in this area, and it's called the LENA. There are programs around the nation who are having children do studies in their homes, trying to measure the number of exchanges that we have back and forth. I liked what a University of Wisconsin of Madison reading scientist said. He said, for preschoolers, the fastest way to get them on track to being a good reader is to talk to them. He suggested preschool programs build vocabulary and awareness of the world. If you are building vocabulary, I can start with what pictures on the lower right. I can show them an illustration of something that adults will recognize as the Apple logo. Or I can show them a black and white sketch or a colored picture of an apple. But to be really true about knowing about an apple means that that youngster has to have some real life experiences. So holding an apple, picking them from a tree, seeing them in the grocery store and seeing the differences of green apples, red apples, and yellow apples, or better yet, taking a bite out of them. That's how we begin to grow vocabulary, giving children the play experiences to learn. Vocabulary is so important because it predicts later learning. Words that have personal meaning have more purpose for them. So you may have youngsters who don't know what a vest is. They maybe don't own a vest. So do we need to worry about them having the word vest in their vocabulary? Yes, if we're going to send them to American schools, because there aren't very many V words. And most kindergarten teachers expect that children will understand that V, that sound starts in the word vest. The next frame is pretty wordy, but underlines those words that have meaning to you. At age 1, children recognize about 50 words, but by age 3, their vocabulary has grown to about 1,000 words. By age 5, they recognize at least 10,000 words. What a growth. What important early years these are for building the literacy foundation. Young children whose parents read them 5 books a day entered kindergarten having heard about 1.4 million words, more than children who were never read to. That research is from Ohio State. Every time we have a book and a story, we are having the opportunity to grow vocabulary. And as children act those out, those words get practiced over and over again, and those ideas get revisited. Vocabulary development is a significant predictor of future reading achievement. Understand that what is said and being able to say the words or express your thoughts are really 2 different skills. Expect your younger children whose vocabulary is growing, and they may have 50 words, 100 words, but that doesn't mean that they can express it in that many words. So think about a 2-year-old being able to share their thoughts in 2 words, 3-year-olds in 3 words, 4-year-olds in 4, etc. Learning to use correct tense and plural comes just with experience. So they don't say, I want to have my foots, they say my feet. Or they will learn to say, I sat down rather than I sitted down. Another component to this early literacy is phonemic awareness. We talk about children and we read books to them, and the animals make sounds. There's moos and there's clucks and there's all different kinds of sounds. Those sounds are a precursor to being able to talk about letters. So play with all the sounds that you hear in the world, in your world. Then you will begin to be able to point out the sounds that letters make. As you begin to introduce things to children, clap out the sounds that you hear. So you can say, your name is Sue, S-U-E. When they're clapping it, they're hearing the sounds separated, and it's easier for them to begin to recognize those letters. In the bottom row, it talks about there being 44 phonemes in the English language. You don't have to worry about that, but understand that there are lots of different sounds. So when we begin introducing letters to children, the standard now is to share capital letter, lowercase, and also to share the sound that is made. The next two frames show you how quickly language can explode for children. If a child can read the word moth, by changing that one letter O to an A, we have math. And then look at all the different words that changing just one single letter in the word math can produce for them. What you do and how you begin really depends upon the age of the children you're working with. Talking, reading, singing, playing, right back to what the American Library Association has been promoting. Focus on the conversation turns and building vocabulary. How many times can you have a conversation that goes back and forth? When I would hand books out to families, like you see this picture there from my book called Critters, you will find a whole bunch of pictures there. Have you seen any of those animals pictured there today? If you were working with children and you haven't seen any of those animals today, that would indicate that you didn't have the opportunity to introduce those words to the children. But if they're there in a book, they have a visual and you can talk about it, they still have an opportunity to turn that into a new word for them to learn or to visit. And after they hear it a number of times, it may become a part of their vocabulary. I would say to parents, pick one of those words that you see on this page. That's a word you can introduce to your child when you take this book home today. It doesn't matter what book you give them. Every book has that potential to be able to point out a picture and introduce that information to a youngster. Another strategy that we used was called dialogic reading, and it came from a gentleman named Grover Whitehurst. There are other people who talked about dialogic reading, but we use a simple acronym of CAR because we would make a comment, we would ask a question, and then we would give them a response. So you can do this with any picture. You can do this looking out of the window of the car. You can do this looking around the room that you are in. But you begin by asking a question to the child. Do you see a big and gray animal on the picture of this book? If they respond, great. You've started your conversation exchange and you're on your way to learning this new word. No response happens. You say, do you see the gray elephant? If the child then responds, great. You've had your conversation exchange and you're on your way to learning this word. And if they didn't know it, you point to the animal on the page and you say, here is the elephant. And you can tell them about experiences you may have had with this animal or places they might have seen it before, or just go on to a new picture and do the whole thing over. Comment, ask a question, and then respond. Using the sounds of letters to put together words. All you have to do is take a word and put it together. This is a dog, dog. and say the word slow so they can hear the individual components to it. For children learning a native language, it is not much different than learning a new English word. So let's say I have in my collection some sandals, and I have slippers, and I have a boot. Children now have 3 words for things you put on your feet. If we introduce to them a word in another language, no matter which language it is, it's like adding one more option to that item that they will learn. So then we can take those words and we can put them in sentences as they begin to expand their knowledge. Alliterations in songs or rhymes are just really fun for children to play with. Silly snake sat so still. Listen to the S sound. Silly snake sat so still. And you can emphasize the sounds, and as children hear that, they will just laugh and giggle and try to repeat it as well. You can create your own alliterations, especially those that you put their name in. They really love alliterations that are based on the letter of their name. Recognizing alphabet letters and sounds each makes reinforce each other and should be shared together. So talk about the letter, talk about the sound. Rhyming words can playfully be explored with songs, nursery rhymes, finger plays, make up your own rhymes. So silly things like Jack and Jill went up the hill. All we're doing is emphasizing those sounds to make rhyme words. Another activity for you to do is to help children to make observations about the book from its cover. Clap out things, clap out words, clap out syllables. Show them how we read words by going across the page. Use your finger to scroll underneath them. Show them we begin at the front of the book and we go to the back. So think of all these crazy things that are so simple, but yet we need to emphasize those to children. Support literacy and reading. These are some ideas for you to kind of introduce to the children or to continue to introduce, because I'm sure many of them you already do. But the goal for preschoolers is really not reading. Rather, it's building words and print awareness that will later serve as a building blocks for proficient reading and writing. Expose children to a variety of prints that will invite their interest in stories, topics, and activities that will motivate them to learn more. Why do you think that happened? Who said that? Why do you think that happened? You can't ever go wrong with the who, what, when, where, why, and how kind of questions. Some children will learn about letters and sounds as they become writers. They could care less about them, but all of a sudden they have this purpose for a message. Back to the idea of my son wanting to write me a wet paint sign. He wasn't sure how to make that W, so we made the W together, and the rest of it he created. And I was really impressed because I didn't realize we were that far along in building his skills. Provide resources for children to explore with writing. They can be chalk, it can be yarn, it can be bending pieces of pipe cleaner into different shapes. Emerging vocabulary development is one of the most important predictors of later reading achievement. Literacy skills can predict the readiness for school. So the next 2 frames are things I would love if you have your handouts in front of you, the printouts, circle these things. These are things that are the action steps to what I've been talking about to do. Let children retell a story. Let them ask questions. Let them predict what will happen next. Look at pictures and tell stories. They can make up the craziest stories, and who says it's not a great idea? Act out a story. Draw a picture about a story. And then, as I told you, all the different things about just making them about awareness. We start at this end of the book and we end at that end of the book. We start at the top of the page and we move down. So what do families need us to do with them? What they need from us are knowledge, resources, and skills. School plus home equals learning. I say that over and over again. So how do we equip families with knowledge? Families across all ages need information to support their students. They may not realize how important it is to point out letters on stop signs, to look at the labels in their refrigerator, or look at labels as they're eating food at a fast food restaurant. All of those print awareness things can be pointed out to children, and as they do, they're going to be learning more. What knowledge support looks like changes with the child's age and abilities. There is no one size that fits all. Share information that helps families understand where their child is at and where they are going. As much as COVID became a deterrent to education, it also became a bonus to education. When families saw what teachers did every day, and teachers slowed down to model on their computers, on Facebook, on whatever media they used in order to connect with families, families were in awe of the everyday common things that they could do in order to help their children learn. We need to keep in mind where we as a nation stand. Nearly 1 in 5 US adults read at a 3rd grade or lower level. That's 20% of our population. 54% of adults struggle with low literacy skills in reading, writing, numeracy, or digital literacy. 54%, over half. 9 out of 10 parents think their student is at grade level. 8 out of 10 parents say that their student learns B's or above, so they figure their students are doing great in school. Yet our level of being at grade level is close to 50% for students, and that assessment is taken based upon what parents think and what testing actually shows us. In 2022, a survey that was done by a group called Learning Heroes, very great information comes out of that group. Look them up online, you'll find some great information. But they said half of the US students started the school year behind grade level in at least one subject area. How do we equip families to support skills? We can ask parents to do an assessment about where their student is in developing skills. Give them a checklist of questions that they can ask their student or make observations about. It wasn't until I had a kindergartner of my 3rd child in school that I got something called the 5-word rule. And just by using the fingers on your hand while your child is reading, a parent can very quietly put away 1 finger each time the student stumbles on a word on the page. If they've stumbled on 5 words or more on a page, that book is too hard for them and it will discourage them. You instead need to read that book with them and find a book with a lower reading level. I don't know why it took me until my 3rd child came along to read that. My other children, I think, read faster, but that was a real enlightenment to me that I wasn't picking things for him to read that were just beyond his ability and raised frustration rather than success. Provide families information that they can enrich and expand learning. So share the idea of alliteration, share the idea of rhyming, share the idea of tracing letters with their Matchbox cards as you write the letters on the sidewalk outside of their home. Think of all kinds of silly, simple things, and families will be more than happy to do it. Model or instruct families with strategies that will guide their development. You could do that by showing video, by showing pictures, and accept that nurturing children is an acquired skill. Many families don't know where to start when it comes to teaching, and teachers by nature are nurturers, and much of it comes as just an automatic skill. So how do we begin to support some of the skills? The picture on the left is about crawling up and down the stairs. I had a college graduate parent come to me when I was teaching some motor skills and so excited that her daughter had mastered crawling up the steps that particular week. And I said, well, how'd you do coming down? And the mom looked at me and she said, she can't come down. She can't reach the railing. And I said, yeah, but if she crawls up, we need her to safely crawl back down. So we showed her the method of what I call wiggle and plant. Just like you see that little character there on the steps, you take the feet and you just kind of wiggle with the ankles until the butt kind of slides down the step a little bit and the knees get planted on the step below. the hands will automatically come down to keep their balance. And as you continue that process, they can move themselves down the steps in the same way that they moved up. The mother came to me the next week and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe how simple that was. She goes up and she goes down now. And I went, yep, that's the way it works. I really liked one time when my grandson looked at my shoes. Now understand, this little guy's last name begins with the letter Z. Children tend to have an interest in the letters that are most applicable to them. So the letters that are in their name are a good way to get their interest because they have some great meaning to them. And I looked down at my New Balance shoes and I went, oh, yes, I do see a Z for your name. So depends upon how you look at that letter. Is that an N or is that a Z? When I started creating the games that I started to share with families, we found that some things were important to be able to be shared with them. So we always included an area where we gave them learning hints. We told them, why is this skill important? That they would understand how the foundation of this skill evolved. So under colors, it says, the color key gives children a clear visual of colors. Being able to point to the correct color will be easier than naming the color. If I give them tips that they understand what they're looking for, it helps them to guide that learning. And then we would give them an area called more fun things to do. We would talk about the colors and we would give them activities they could do in their home with resources they had there. And we always gave them an area where we would ask them to do an assessment. Where is your student in learning this particular skill? We asked them to see which colors their student was recognizing. And then we gave them yes, no questions so that they could ask questions. Does your learner use color words to name things that they want? I want a red popsicle versus I want the green popsicle, or they may use the fruit names for them. Examples of offering extension ideas. This is a game that I call Going on a Bear Hunt. And I do not take credit for creating this game, except that a parent came to me and had a question about it. So what we did is we sent things home in a little zipped bag. And that little zip bag contained a book and it contained an activity to go with it. So what you see there is the Let's Go on a Bear Hunt. They were learning to count spaces. They were talking about the experiences that the bear had going on the bear hunt. And then they went backwards through all the experiences as well. The ideas for that came from a parent who had been in the classroom and said, gosh, those kids sure like that story downstairs. Why don't you have a game for them to take home? And I went, great idea. That's what we shall do. The artwork on that picture there, on that game, was not done by me, and it was not done by copying it from the book. It was done by a parent who drew the pictures for us. But again, you'll see, they all went with directions of how to use it. They went with extension ideas, the more fun things to do, and they came with hints that the parent could observe what the learning was about. Since that worked so well in our games, we decided to do that on books. People who work with children are just by nature used to doing those story extensions, but my family's not so much. So we would take ideas about the book and we would put it into writing and we would tape them to the back of the book. And in that way, we could give them some ideas what they could do to extend the idea. So no water in the tub. One of the extension ideas was to fill the sink or the tub, find items in the home that would sink or float. Equip families to support skills. Build relationships with families. What resources do they have? Find out what is in the homes of the families that you work with. What would extend the experiences they have? Share resources. They can be things to support learning, utilizing low cost or repurposed things. I attended a conference online a few months ago, and it was an international play conference. The whole theme of it was about playing to learn. And one of the presentations was play just a piece of paper away. And it challenged all of us to have a piece of paper for the training. And it proceeded to say, what can you do with a piece of paper? And it was just intriguing what people sitting at their desk all around the world could do with one piece of paper. And also reach out and collaborate with community partners. Some of you are with Head Start. What is your library offer? Some of you are with other kinds of programs. Who are the people in your community that could become your partners to help enrich learning? I did a research project, and it was really a 3-level thing. I was trying to identify what strategies were most effective in inviting parents to support learning. So we did 3 things. We gave family suggestions, we provided suggestions or prompts, and then we shared resources. So looking over at the right, the top is a page that we put together that simply had the words to the finger play. You assume that every family knows about that? Kind of a naive assumption when you're in the classroom. You just assume everybody knows that one. But there were many parents, especially international parents, who had no idea what the kids were talking about when they came home, wanting to do that finger play. The number 2 down there shows that we sent home at the 2nd level, providing suggestions or prompts, the words to doing that finger play. But we also gave them craft sticks and little cutout monkeys so they could make some hand puppets. And in the number 3, it's a bag that I bought from Oriental Trading. It was a bag that cost us just a little over $1. We put the words in it. We put a book about monkeys jumping on the bed, and we gave them 5 finger plays to do. Families at all 3 levels of intervention did the activities, whether we gave them a suggestion, the prompts, or the shared resources. But the more that received the resources to be shared with, the more often they were used, because everything was right there and all they had to do was open and do. So I continue to talk about that 3-piece strategy as well. What we need to do is to give suggestions. So suggestions at home of activities to do, or they could be activity suggestions for going home. They could be things to do in what I call drive time activities. Find signs with the letter B. That could be a drive home kind of activity for the family to be able to do. Play touch and name. Have families walk around the home and touch and name the things that they land on. It could be ideas that we put on a sticker that the child wears home. Those of you working with really young children, the best place for those stickers to give families a little nudge, and you can't do it every day because it will lose its oomph, but you certainly can once in a while put a sticker on the last diaper of the day. At most, you're going to get a lot of giggles out of the parent while they are changing that diaper and come across the sticker. But many times they immediately go into action and do whatever the activity says. Suggestions with props. Things can be as simple as paper plates. So in the upper right-hand corner, you see paper plates. If I were in the same room with you right now, I would have had those letters spread all around the floor. These are just paper plates, and they have the letters on them. I would have asked you to take your toe and step on the plates to be able to spell your name. Or you can just use paper and you can make a set of letters yourself, or you can take a piece of chalk and you can make chalk letters outside of your program. But as you ask parents to spell things, to find certain letters, it makes them aware that this is a role that they can play with their child's learning and how easy it is for that to be done. Imagine putting the letters out there and having a child spell other things. What about other words of significance, names of people in their families? Put the letters in order. Think of all the things that you can do. Hop on the letter T, jump to this one, walk tippy-toe to this letter. Just putting them out there allows families to see how easy it is to build on literacy skills. Share an activity page or resources for families to do. Share with them stickers. Egg cartons are a beautiful place for them to be able to spell simple words like spelling their name. Each little cup in the carton holds 1 milk lid, and away you go, you're spelling their names. Or you can share a resource. What you see here on the far right is an example of an activity that we did. Those were just like a clown juggling with balloons, and we had milk lids with magnets on the back, and they stuck to each of the letters because we put a small washer underneath each one. So we can do suggestions where we give them nudges and ideas to do, We can give them suggestions with props for them to do, or we can share resources that they can use and return to us. Give families guidance. Show how interested children are in books. I've had parents who say, oh, the kids never sit down at home. I can't read a book. And when I show them a picture of what it looks like in the classroom when they're read to, they're absolutely amazed. Notice the parents on the upper left picture where they're all standing around the table. Look at how engaged those children are. And the parents are just there monitoring, coaching, and watching how the child is absorbing that information. Share clips with the family. Maybe it's reading something and you can do a recording and let parents see what that recording looks like. Say to a parent, oh, we read this book in school today and your child really liked it, and let them take it home and borrow it. Send books home library style. Here's a book I'm letting you take home tonight. Bring it back for tomorrow. I visited a school when I was doing some supervision work in the state of Ohio, and it was a toddler classroom, and there was a bin of books right by the classroom door out in the hall. And I wonder what those books are for. And it took me only a few minutes as the day was closing to realize what. The children walked out, they picked out a book out of the bin, they had special little bags that they put them in to carry them home, and they took them home to read. And I asked the teacher about it. That bin of books was checked out from the local public library. She went and she got a new bin every month. And I said, are you worried that they won't come back? And she said, should I be? And I said, if you're not, I guess not. She said that she did not lose books, but she knew her families would not make it to the public library. So she was the one who shared the materials to go home with. We did a lending library and the resources that we did. Some of them were like what you see there, a fishing game made with juice lids and words taped on, or the juggling clown with doing colors, numbers, shapes. We did many different themes. Each classroom had their own collection. We started with doing it in one classroom, and it was so successful, we expanded it to all of the classrooms, and families were the ones that helped me make and maintain the games. We grew to 58 lending packets per each room. So that meant in our program, we had 522 kits. Did we lose some? Yes, about 12%. But one room accounted for 44% of the loss. That meant that I had a classroom who didn't like to say, you know, you need to return that one before this one comes back. When we tracked the reason for loss, 44% of the loss amounted to the fact that children moved. Not that they left our program, but that they moved to a new location, and as a result, things didn't come back. Over the year, we did replace some units, but we circulated 3,184 kits that year. Doing periodic surveys with the families, 85% played it 2 or more times, and kits were often used by non-resident family members. So we were impacting what grandparents were doing and babysitters were doing and after school care was doing. Books were read. Great resource to share. Other kinds of things that you might share. This is a resource that comes out of Harvard University. On the handout I gave you, it's on the lower left frame towards the bottom of the page. But there are activities that you can share with infants, with toddlers, that you can then give families just gentle nudges of activities that they can do at home. They're beautifully illustrated and come in more than just English. Like some of the research that's been done out there, I am very interested in research in regards to family engagement. So there are a book recently published with Karen Mapp and Ann Henderson, 2 really large names and some other significant researchers about parent involvement. It's called Everyone Wins. They did research studies where they followed research that was already done in the field. They did not do the research. They just looked for studies that were done. And the Chicago Parent Centers, which is on page 148, they said relationships between parent engagement and positive social academic outcomes of children was very, very strong. And on the right column, the impact of family involvement. They summarized 95 different research studies, And of those research studies, read the very bottom comment there. Across studies, intervention efforts to engage parents from all backgrounds can be effective when providing them guidance and direction on how to support their child's learning. Clear evidence. This is another study that was done from the Center for Universal Education. This is about sharing resources and giving family the knowledge, the skills, and the resources, what I've been saying we need to share as tools for families. But what they found in communities that have a trusting relationship, between parents or caregivers, teachers, and school leaders, whenever there was those trusting relationships built, students did better, a lot better. Bottom comment, I highlighted there for you. Schools with low levels of relational trust went nowhere, making virtually no improvement in student learning across the decade it was studied. Why is that so important to know? When you say to a parent, here's a book your child really likes, I welcome you to take it home tonight. Your child is learning this. Here's some information for you to practice that skill. When we empower parents with that kind of information, we can't help but build a relationship. We can't help but transfer to that family that we really care about their student and we're concerned about their learning, not just that they have survived the day with us, but that we're really looking at the learning. Other ideas for working with families, create books. If you have a student who is not interested in sitting down, and by the way, sitting down is not related to their ability to listen. They can be across the room and they still can hear you. So don't stop reading just because their little bottoms don't sit down. But understand that some children are the type of learner that they learn from manipulating things, from moving things, from doing things. So here are a variety of some different types of books that can be created by you. So bear with me that I try to get the screen in the right spot as I share these to you. So this is a book that is done on different colors of paper plates. All we had to do was select a bunch of different colors. The picture on the top left is my grandson, Dylan. And this was him with a brown bear that we took a picture of that went on the brown page. He made this book for his baby sister. And at the end, he sat on the floor and he read his book to Miss Lily. And it was the most beautiful thing you could possibly imagine them doing together. On the bottom are some other things. Just by using some paper plates, they are able to create books in different themes. So you see things that are round. At the top, you see a half a paper plate that is used there to make a book that's about a snail. Or you could do a turtle one if you used a bowl that was turned upside down. In the next column is what we call a folded mini book. If you've not done this one before, it is done simply by taking a single piece of paper. You fold it in half the long way as if this were a hot dog. You unfold it. I've never done this workshop before showing people how to make books online, so bear with me here. You fold it the other way as if this were a hamburger. Then you take the sides of the book and you fold it up. So now I've just folded up one side. I do the same thing on the opposite side. And when I hold it by the fold and I do this, then I know I've got it in the right place. It's got flapping wings. On the page, there is a crease created from where I folded it the first time. I'm tearing it just from the top of the fold down to the crease to the next page. And it just kind of tears apart and flaps like this. I find the page that says my color book, and I take everything else and I fold it around it. So now I have a mini book that the children can make or do things with. This is small for your young learners. If I started with a legal size paper, or better yet, an 11 by 17, I get a much bigger book. I can even do it with other kinds of books as well, with other kinds of papers as well. So if you had drawing paper that was of even bigger size, think of the size of book that you would have. So you see there are examples of a fishbowl there. They came to a parent workshop and families made this book, and it was a counting activity. So we gave them a sheet of stickers and they were told to put one fish in the one bowl, two fish in the goldfish bowl with two pictures. So you can do many different themes and topics to create those. I'm going to show you one that I knocked over here, so hold on a second. This one is way over in the upper right-hand corner. This is what I call a bag book. A question is written on the body of the bag, but the answer is underneath the flap. So I could be talking about colors or shapes or numbers. This one was a riddle book that I did with older students. Actually, this was a third grade after school reader who needed some literacy support. She absolutely did not want to see another book when she got to me at the end of her day. And I said, oh, it's okay, we're not going to read today. And she looked at me like, what is this teacher up to? And I said, you just have to not laugh, but I'm going to read to you. So I read to her riddles. What did one dog detective say to the other dog detective? I think someone is tailing us. So as a result, we picked the things that made her laugh and we created a book in order for her to take that riddle home. And I guarantee you, she read that to other people in her family. What you see in the picture up there, do you know what this is? And what we did is we put a picture with half of it sticking out and half of it underneath the flap. So when that flap was lifted, you would see the rest of that picture. If you can guess what that is, it was a shoe. There's another type of bag, and that is what I call a tucked book. I have attached paper to the inside of the bag. So I've left the bag folded and I've just applied some paper that fits from the crease of the bottom of the bag to the end. And now when I fold this and it flaps down, there's my little book. By putting a different type of a handle on it, it has a totally different look. So this could be done as a Father's Day gift, and the children could write a book for their dad on the inside. This one, I have been told, has been everything from a purse to a going on a trip suitcase, many different ways and purposes for doing that. There's another picture there that shows you what I call a bag book. This one is done with Ziploc bags or clear bags. This one is about alliteration. Andrew ate apples. Page B, Bev baked banana bread. C, Carolyn called the cat. Just a book created based upon a particular theme. This was one that we did with our youngsters in the spring, trying to get them out to go on a nature walk with their family. So what we did is we gave them 5 bags, we put them in together with a ring, and we gave them a piece of paper on the inside that they could write upon. So this one says, this is a walnut. We found it on the road. It fell from the tree. Indeed, that was a walnut that they found. This one says, these are rocks. I found them on the road. The road is breaking up. The storm did it, and the rain. If you have grown up on a farm in Wisconsin, you know that this is called city asphalt. Regardless of whether it was a city asphalt piece or a rock, it was still a great experience for that family to go out on a nature walk and to find these items. And I'm sure in geology, he will later learn what that true item actually was. Another type of book, there is a napkin book. And that's exactly what it is. It is a napkin that has a piece of paper inside. Unfortunately, to do this soccer one, you do need a little bigger piece than just an 8.5 by 11, or you can use the 8.5 11 the wrong way and waste a bunch of paper. But I've taken just a napkin, wrapped it over some paper, and by writing in that, it's a lot more exciting than it is to just write on a piece of paper. You can find cutesy things, like you can find napkins about popular themes, characters that the children might like, topics that will interest them. One more there is called an envelope book. And the envelope book is just that. Instead of this being an envelope, I've taken the flap, I've licked it, and I have made a pocket. So this one is called My Family. So My Family, and each page is, we spend time together, and whether the children draw a picture of what they did, put a picture in there, or the family writes a message about things they enjoy doing together. This is a way for children to get to know each other. The example that you see there on this page is words that go in the pocket. So this particular one is a wig, and it rhymes with the word pig. So the next page is going to be a different ending sound, and it again will be things that rhyme. They could have 5 different things that rhyme with pig that they drew pictures of and put in those pockets there. Another time we did this one, it was a blackmail event. In other words, they had to come to a workshop that I did for literacy before families were allowed to go on the field trip. We were going to the zoo. Each pocket contains information about a particular animal. The parents looked up the animals. They wrote the descriptions. We got pictures of the animals that then went inside each of the pockets for them to be able to read with their youngsters at home. What was beautiful about this one that I never expected to happen was that parents became the expert about that animal. And as we toured the zoo, they were the ones that told their students all about those particular animals. One more left there is made with a cereal box. And it's not the cereal box itself that's important, but it's the cardboard on the inside. So by cutting the tops and the bottoms off in one side, this is a nice piece of cardboard that we can make covers of books with, or we can make the whole book with the cardboard kinds of pages. I did this one for younger children. So we had different textures. This is bubble wrap on one, burlap on another. There's sandpaper on this one. So just different things with texture in order to allow the younger learners to have a book that was made for them. But books, making them and involving the children gets them very excited about being a writer and sharing their books with others. As I had shared with you, I've been working with Vicki. She is taking over the learning props things and adding some great new ideas. I'm developing some new materials, but we've also expanded our games that I had offered as the fabric bags with a book inside and the dice and the movers into a lower cost product that is made with just cardstock and comes with a spinner and movers in a book as well. So there's a line of new books and games that are coming out as well. There will be some family activity kits, the transition to kindergarten, as well as one that you see on this page called Counting Challenge, where students actually cut apart those cards, and those cards then become challenges that they do a certain number of times depending upon what number range they are practicing and learning. New resources coming out. We have a game called Healthy Me and one called That's Me. And there's also one called Safe Me. That one is still on the drawing board, but getting closer to being done. They will be available in both English and Spanish English. Excited that we'll be able to share those with you very, very shortly. Your challenge was to have 3 ideas that you could take away from what I shared today to be intentional and purposeful about expanding literacy skills for your youngsters. So whether you're working at a very young age level or whether you're working with school age children, all levels depend upon the students you're working with in terms of what you will begin to do. If you have any questions that we can support you in your important work, reach out to either Vicki or myself. If you would like to enter one idea that you're going to take away or have an idea that you would like me to add to the next time I share this workshop, would most welcome your suggestions. Vicki, anything that we need to add? You may have to unmute.
I think we're good. We had some really good suggestions going on in the chat.
I
So-
can't wait to read them too.
And we'll be sending a follow-up with the recording along with the notes from the chat and such. So Bev can make notes and send those out to folks as well. So that look for that in another probably 24 hours. We'll have that out to you.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. May you have a very blessed week.
Thank you for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.